The album comes out 5 days in July, 6 times platinum, 5 singles. I'll read them off. 5 Days in May, Hasn't Hit Me Yet, Bad Timing, Till I Gain Control Again, and Head Over Heels. I remember my dad having that album, as well as later on the Greatest Hits album. He was playing that album when I was 8 years old. I remember hearing that album around the house. So that was a staple of music, staple of our house anyways.
Right.
So that album was recorded at Greg's house, and it has a very live off the floor sound. Was it actually recorded live off the floor?
Yes, indeed,
you touch
it was.
on a little bit of the recording? You said you thought it might just be an EP, and then it grew into a full length.
It did grow initially. Well, at least when the idea was first presented to me, it was kind of like, yeah, we're going to do like an acoustic EP, and we're just going to go to Greg's house. And it's going to be real casual, and we got the Comfort Sound mobile recording truck to record at Greg's house, and we set up in his living room. And Doug McClelland, who was the owner and the engineer on the recording truck, came out with his truck to record us. And we basically started out. We went to Greg's place, and this was at a time. This was before there were any solo records, from Jim or Greg. So all their writing went to Blue Rodeo, and they were both quite prolific at this time, and so between them they had 30 songs for that record, and it was never an intention. And like I say, it was like, we'll do an acoustic EP. So the idea being, we'll do 5 or 6 songs that'll be acoustic, but we'll just demo. We're just going to record all these other songs. We'll just demo all these songs, see what we got, and then we're going to be doing another record that'll be like a full band rock album with electric guitars and what have you, and sticks on the drums but so we went there and initially and just recorded everything. And I actually have cassettes still of like some of that stuff actually ended up on a box set we put out some years ago. That there was a CD in that box set called Odds and Sods, and it's outtakes from various sessions, like outtakes from Casino and outtakes from 5 Days, and we had a lot of stuff. So I think when we recorded those 30 songs that they had, it became apparent that it was more than just 5 or 6 that would work well as acoustic songs. That we actually had 12 or 13 songs that would work really well as approached acoustically. So we sort of started focusing on those, and we decided, okay, we're going to do an album of this stuff. And so we recorded a bunch of stuff like that, and it was a beautiful experience for me. It was going out to Greg's place at the time. We stayed over there. It was in the country. He still lives there. He lives in this beautiful spot that's sort of not far from Peterborough. It was a part of Ontario I'd never spent any time in, sort of in the Ganaraskas. And it was just, gorgeous property. He had this neighbor who had a peacock that would come over every day and like hang out and like be out on the roof. Like I remember, going, yeah, yeah, like screaming. You'd wake up to this peacock that would be out on the roof outside your bedroom window, and there were like horses around, and it was a really sort of beautiful rural setting, and that setting had a huge. I really felt like it had a big effect on the vibe of the music, and it was also the first time. Greg was a bachelor at that time, and his whole house was just filled with instruments. And, it was the first time I'd ever been in someone's house where every room had amps in it and vintage guitars all over the place. And he had a drum set, and he had a vintage drum set. Everything was vintage, and I thought, like, oh man, like this is how to live. This is how you should spend your money, just having, just filling your house with instruments and just being surrounded by music all the time. But, you know, and I was really inspired by that. And it was a beautiful experience, just hanging out there, living there, and playing together all day. And so we did that, and I think we worked for a week or two, and then we had an Australian tour that we did. We went and toured Australia for 2 weeks, which was our first time going to Australia, and we had a great time doing that. And we spent a lot of time on that tour, like hanging out with acoustic guitars and kind of shedding and reworking the songs that we were working on at Greg's place. And then we came back and we re-recorded all the songs we'd done, kind of with a fresh take on them after being in Australia, and kind of deconstructing them a little more. And we also did a thing where we brought a lot of people. We kind of invited people over. We kind of wanted to have this communal party atmosphere, which was also kind of funny because we did that, but then when it was recording and there's all these people hanging around, you sort of realize, like, okay, we can't record with all these people hanging around yapping and stuff. So I remember making them all go outside and shut up.
They have to hang out with the animals.
Yeah, like, be quiet. Okay, now we're recording. And so they'd all be like outside, like looking in the windows and stuff like that while we're recording, head over heels or something. And so we did the majority of the record in 5 days. And that is where the title comes from, 5 Days in July, because that was in July. So I'd say about 80% of the record was recorded in that second session during 5 days. And that's why, though the song refers to the song 5 Days in May, which is the lead-off song on the record, but it was the bulk of the album was recorded in 5 days in July, and so that's why the album is called 5 Days.
So was that song recorded in May then, or?
No, 5 Days in May was recorded in.
Sorry, was it written? Sorry, was it written? I'm just wondering why the difference between the song title and the album title. 5 Days in May
was titled 5 Days in May because it's a story about a couple that fall in love during 5 days in May. It has, I believe it's a fictional song. It's actually loosely based on a story our then sound engineer, our live sound guy, Ken McNeil, told this story to Jim, where every time he was on tour and he went to a beach, he would write his wife's name in the sand. It was this kind of romantic thing he did. And that's where Jim got that was the germ of the idea for Jim. So, there's a line like he wrote her name in the sand, never even let go of her hand, like that's that line. That was kind of, Jim sort of started there and then just extrapolated using his imagination the rest of the story. So, it's essentially fiction. I don't necessarily think Ken and his wife met and fell in love during 5 days in May. I think that Jim made that part up. But, that's how songs get written. You start with some little idea and then just make the rest of it up, And the 5 Days in May was not written in May. It's just a fictional story about a couple who fall in love during 5 days in May.
That was some good insider information about that.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. I have some words sent in from Rich Beddoe, who's the drummer for Finger 11 and Saint Asonia. He says, I don't believe I've had the pleasure of meeting Glenn properly, although I'm sure we passed each other and said hello in many a Canadian function hallway. But I have, however, been able to watch from a distance at his incredible career and beautifully crafted drumming. To put it simply, Glenn becomes the song he's playing. He turns a song into a living and breathing entity. His style, feel, and musicianship with his bands is unmatched, and he is a Canadian treasure. I've seen Glenn play for 200 people at the Horseshoe and 10,000 people at the Budweiser stage, and if I close my eyes for either, I know it's Glenn that's on the drums. So Rich from Finger 11.
Oh, that's a super nice thing to say. Thank you very much, Rich. That's really nice because, I guess one of the highest compliments you can pay a musician is saying that you recognize their sound, and everybody kind of wants to have their own sound, and I that is that's not necessarily something I pursue. Like, I don't necessarily go like, I got to have my sound. Like, I pursue the right sound for whatever song I'm playing or whatever song I'm recording. I don't sort of go like, you got to have the Glenn Milchem stamp on this, like if a song demands something that doesn't sound like me at all, then I will play that. So it's still nice to know that someone feels they can identify my sound or my feel from my playing. So I appreciate that. That's very kind of them to say that.
So when I interview musicians for the podcast, normally they have 3 albums, 4 albums, maybe 5 albums. And I do a deep dive. I listen to the entire discography to really get into it. In your case, Blue Rodeo has 16 albums, a couple greatest hits, a few live albums. The different members have solo projects. You've worked with other artists. So I had my work cut out for me, but I like a good challenge. So are you able to rapid fire through just a few of the projects you worked on outside of Blue Rodeo? So it's crazy that despite how prolific the band was, you somehow were able to work with all these other artists at the same time.
Yeah, I'm on many dozens of records, and I can't even possibly remember them all.
Any that stand out, and we can. I do want to take time to talk about your solo album from 2019, and then Blue Rodeo's new album in 2021 as well. So we'll get to that.
Yeah, ones that stand out, I guess. Well, I mentioned some like the Change of Heart record, Smile. There's the records I was on the early 80s or the mid 80s, some of which may not be well known to people, but were kind of influential, like Plasticine Replicas is a band that comes to mind who are no longer remembered and who are almost impossible to find online except for a couple of videos on YouTube. But they were a really important band, an influential band in Toronto in the 80s. I played on their record. I guess Andrew Cash, like I mentioned. I'm on Jane Siberry's album When I Was a Boy. I played on one song on that. Actually what I played on that was there's a song there called The Temple, which is the opening track of that, and she had a sample from When the Levee Breaks by Led Zeppelin, and to use that sample cost $10,000. So they hired me to go to Metalworks in Mississauga and basically play the groove to When the Levee Breaks, and then they just and they use that as a song. But I'm on a lot of records, so it's hard to it's hard to think of them all.
You got the 4 albums from the Swallows, right?
Those are my that is my solo band, the Swallows. I do have a list here. Let's see. All the bands that I mentioned did put out records, like Andy Curran, Solo 69, things like that. While I was with Rodeo, I recorded with Luke Doucette and Melissa McClelland, who subsequently became Whitehorse.
Hayden, I was a big fan of Hayden when I was 18. In 2004, I was listening to Hayden during college.
And I recorded a couple of tracks with Hayden over the years, but that's not someone I would say I've worked with extensively. In terms of records, Ian Thornley, Joan Smith and the Jane Does are a band I played with recently. Tara Lightfoot, I'm recording with her now, but I haven't put anything out. It's hard to think of all the records I've been on. I've been on Greg Keelor. I was on Greg Keelor's last solo record, actually, which actually kind of happened by accident, because he recorded his solo album, his last solo album, which is called Share the Love. He recorded that with a different drummer, but then that drummer, Dan Neal, who's a great drummer, Daniel Neal, and Greg recorded with a band of people mostly from the Peterborough area, including Jim Boskill, who is now a member of Blue Rodeo and who also plays with the Sheepdogs, and some other musicians. And then he wanted to make a live video playing all the songs from the record. And because Dan Neal had moved to Newfoundland at that point, so he asked me if I would play drums on it. And so we did a live performance of the record and he liked that so much that he made that the album release. He released that instead of, he actually released, I think he released the studio version on vinyl, or on, no, he released that on CD, I think, and then he released the live version that I played with him on vinyl and download. So I did that. Gosh, I think I'd have to go up and look at my record collection to think of other records I've played on, but there's been a lot. And yeah, the Swallows are a band that I had from 99 to 2011. I formed that when I released 4 CDs with that band, and I played guitar and sang in that band and wrote the songs for that band. On the records, I often played most or all of the instruments as well, but it would also have the band as well. So
was
anyway,
that an outlet for music that was outside of the Blue Rodeo realm?
Yeah, well, I've been writing songs since I was 16, and I just wanted to put some songs out, and try my hand at doing that. I'd always kind of wanted to do that, and one of the things that impressed me about Bobby Wiseman was when he was in Blue Rodeo, he also started releasing solo records and had a parallel solo career as a solo artist, and did quite well. So that was something I thought, like, oh, that's the thing to do, like get in a band that's like, working and putting records out and it has a steady career, and then do your own thing at the same time. Like that's a cool thing. I want to do that. And I ended up following in his footsteps a lot more closely than I realized I was going to. But yeah, that was basically the idea. So it was never something that was like a full-time pursuit. It was kind of more like, I always called it an expensive hobby. But I did that.
So in 2019, you put out a solo album. So this is Fates Conspire. And this is a beautiful collection of 9 songs that are acoustic, stripped down. And my favorite songs, having listened to it, I got it written down here. So Wrench, St. Elmo's Fire, Fates Conspire, and 3 Chords. Those are my favorite songs on the album.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
What inspired you to release a solo album at this point in your storied career?
I think that, I just did it because I had to break up my band. I have 4 kids. 4 kids that are pretty spread out. My eldest son is 36. I mentioned earlier when we were talking that I was 22 when my first son was born, and then I had a daughter who's now 23. My son, when I was 22, my son is now 36, and then I had a daughter who's now 23, and then I've had 2 children who are now 11 and 13. And so when my youngest, my 11-year-old son was born, I just realized I didn't have time to have a band, like to lead a band anymore. Because it wasn't, if it was profitable, I could have kept doing it. I could have said, oh, I got to keep doing this. I'm, raking it in or whatever. But it was kind of it broke even at best. So I just didn't have, I think I had just released the 4 Swallows record when my son was born. And I remember trying to organize a rehearsal, and everybody else in the band at that point were also professional musicians. And I remember it taking something like 30 emails to organize a rehearsal. And I had like a baby and a 3-year-old and a teenage daughter, and I was just like, I don't have time to do this anymore. So I kind of set all that aside. But then, years later, I was still writing songs, and I was kind of leaning more towards, like, the Swallows were a loud rock band. And I was kind of leaning towards, I'd been listening to softer music, and I was kind of leaning towards the idea of playing softer music. But I didn't want to, and I kind of just felt like I wanted to put something out in the world. And I wanted to try and do an acoustic thing. And I wanted to be stripped down and I wanted it to be live off the floor. I wanted it to be without overdubs or edits, though there are, in the end, there were 1 or 2 edits, and I think there's one overdub on the thing where I think my wife sang harmonies on one song actually. And so I just did that with a buddy of mine, John Bora, who's a great local musician, singer-songwriter, and also bass player. And he played bass in the Swallows for the 10 years that the band existed. And he's also a very good recording engineer and live sound man. So he recorded it for me, and I just did it. I just wanted to do a low-budget recording and just put it out online. I didn't want to, press CDs or records and feel like I got to get rid of them all and stuff like that. So I just put it out, and I just kind of let it hang there. And it's not something I've gone out of my way to promote or anything like that. I've never been good at promoting my own music. I love recording. I love writing songs. I love making music. I have a really hard time going out there going, I'm great, you should listen to me. I guess, and I think some of that is I'm not as confident as a singer-songwriter as, say, I am as a drummer. Though I'm feeling a little more confident these days. But like even that record, I kind of put it out, and then I just kind of went, okay, I'm done with that. So yeah, I put it out in 2019. But interestingly enough, like my wife is a camera operator, and she shot all the recording that we did with the idea that we would put out videos of each song, me doing the songs live. But then her mom had a stroke, and so she kind of had devoted all her spare time to looking after her mom. So those videos never got completed. But recently, John Bora, the guy who engineered it, has gotten into editing videos. And he's like, oh, can I edit some of that footage? So we just put out a video of the title track, Fates Conspire. So that's out there. But, to be honest, that's behind me now. And I'd like to do another record that would, at some time in the future, because I'm still writing. And I guess it'll be under my own name, and it'll probably be mostly acoustic based, but it'll probably have other musicians and stuff. But I'm not sure when that's going to happen. Right now, I'm playing with so many different artists that all my time is about learning songs and drumming. Right now, my focus is all on that as opposed to songwriting.
Is it true that the title track was written for your wedding?
Yeah, I wrote Fates Conspire I thought it would be nice to have an original song to sing at my wedding. So yeah,
what a romantic dude. Good for you. That's how you lock them down for life. Attaboy.
Yeah, we're pretty locked down.
That's funny. I got a quote from a friend of yours here. So this is Walter Sobczak, and
oh yeah, Walter, yeah.
He's an amazing engineer. Worked with Sarah Sleen, Barenaked Ladies, Bruce Cockburn, and what's crazy is he worked on the Dirty Dancing soundtrack that sold 32 million albums, and at one point was the second best-selling album of all time. So Walter says the following words. He says, I've known Glenn, this is a long one. I've known Glenn since early 1984 when he became the drummer of Vital Signs. Our respective Toronto post-punk bands played shows together in Toronto, London, and Montreal. I love him as a person, and his drumming is extraordinarily great. I recall the London, Ontario show when Brat X remarked to me while Vital Signs were playing, look at him, he's playing 2 rhythms simultaneously. Then there was the Concordia University show where both bands got food poisoning from the supplied Saint-Hubert chicken. Well, except for me, as I was a vegetarian that summer. So he got out of that unscathed. He says, every time I run into him is memorably great. The last 2 times were a while back, but I remember each one of them. Once while walking through Baldwin Village, and another time when Glenn and his twin brother duo, the Swallows, were playing the Bovine at either North by Northeast or Canadian Music Week. So that's from Walter. Just reminiscing about the past.
Which is awesome. That's awesome. And Walter's great. Walter was in a band called Sturm Group, who were a really interesting band and definitely one of my favorite bands from the scene at that time. And and then he went on to become an engineer at Wellesley Sound, and worked on a lot of records. And he was also in a band called Ragadeath with Mishi Me, who were pretty kind of rock, hip hop, Jamaican dance hall kind of combination thing that was really something in the 90s. But actually, the band he's talking about, the Swallows was my band. The band I was in with my twin brother was my brother's band called Starvin' Hungry. And that was a thing I loved to do. That was just me and him on guitar and me on drums, and his songs. And his stuff was really strong. And that was a garage rock duo. And I played with him from 1997 to 1999. And we did one recording, which you can find on Bandcamp, I think it's called Raw Like Love, and it's unreleased demos by Starvin' Hungry. Starvin' is Starvin, no apostrophe, no G, Hungry. And I thought his stuff was really great. And we did probably what Walter saw was maybe a reunion show we did about 8 or 9 years ago at the Bovine. That's probably what he saw. So that was Starvin' Hungry, not to be confused with the Swallows, which was my 4-piece band. Understandable though that he got that mixed up.